Back in the late 1960s and early 70s, when American muscle cars ruled the drag strips, there was one man who changed the game forever, not with more horsepower, but with something far more clever and a little dangerous. His name was Bill Jenkins. Folks called him Grumpy because he didn't suffer fools lightly, but everyone respected his mind. He was an engineer at heart, always looking for the edge. And that edge came from a simple but radical idea: dip the body panels of a race car in acid, chemically mill away the excess metal until the shell was so light that two grown men could lift the empty body off the ground. It wasn't magic. It was science, and it was secretive. Those acid-dipped panels shaved hundreds of pounds off the car without anyone being the wiser, at least for a while. The result? In 1970, at the NHRA Winter Nationals, Grumpy's acid-dipped Camaro ran the very first sub-10-second pass in pro stock history, a stunning 9.99-second quarter-mile. It shocked the sport, beat the best Mopar teams, and forced the rule makers to take notice. This is the story of Bill Jenkins' hidden war on weight, a quiet revolution that forever altered drag racing. Who was Grumpy? The genius engineer. William Tyler Jenkins was born on December 22, 1930, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. His family soon moved to the quieter surroundings of Malvern and Downingtown, where young Bill grew up on his grandfather's farm property. From an early age, he was fascinated by machines, starting with a neighbor's tractor engine, learning how things worked by taking them apart and putting them back together better. After high school, he enrolled at Cornell University to study mechanical engineering. He attended on and off for several years, supporting himself by tuning six-cylinder Chevrolets and Oldsmobile V8s whenever he needed money. But life intervened. His father passed away, and Bill left school after 3 years without finishing his degree. He always said he wasn't much for tests or classrooms, but what he learned at Cornell stayed with him. The principles of engineering became the foundation of everything he would achieve. By the mid-1950s, Bill had opened his own small shop in Malvern, Pennsylvania, Jenkins Competition. He started as a tuner and engine builder, quietly gaining a reputation among local racers for making Chevrolets run faster than anyone thought possible. In the early 1960s, he teamed up with driver Dave Strickler. Together they campaigned a series of Chevrolets nicknamed Old Reliable, cars that set records and won big events, including Little Eliminator at the 1963 Nationals with a powerful Z11 427. When General Motors pulled out of factory racing in 1963, Bill and Dave even switched to Dodges for a time, taking them to England as part of the U.S. drag racing team in 1964. But Bill's heart was always with Chevrolet, especially that revolutionary small-block V8. General Motors would later credit him with doing more than almost anyone to develop and perfect it for competition. Around 1962, the nickname Grumpy stuck. It came from an employee, or perhaps a summer intern, who noticed Bill's no-nonsense style at the track and in the shop. He had little patience for idle talk or slow questions when he was focused on finding that extra tenth of a second. But those who knew him understood it wasn't meanness, it was intensity. A quick mind with limited tolerance for distraction. Grumpy fit, and it became legendary. By the late 1960s, as the NHRA prepared to launch Pro Stock, a new professional class for modified production cars, Bill Jenkins was already seen as one of the sharpest minds in the sport. He wasn't just a driver or a tuner. He was an innovator, always searching for the edge. And that edge, as we'll see, would soon lead him to something no one else dared try on such a scale: a hidden war on weight itself. The forbidden Camaro, Penske's mistake, Grumpy's gold. In the winter of 1966 to 1967, one of the very first Chevrolet Z/28 Camaros rolled off the assembly line in Norwood, Ohio. It was a special car, built for road racing in the SCCA Trans Am series, and it was delivered straight to Roger Penske's shop in Pennsylvania. Roger Penske was already making a name for himself as one of the sharpest team owners in motorsports, and his crew had big plans for this new Camaro. To gain every possible advantage on the twisting road courses, they took the body in white, the bare, unpainted steel shell, and sent it to be chemically milled. That meant dipping it in an acid bath to etch away layers of metal, thinning the panels significantly to reduce weight. With a full roll cage welded inside for structural support, the idea was sound in theory. But when the shell came back from the acid dip, the metal was so thin that Chevrolet's own engineers took one look and shook their heads. They believed the car would never hold up under the severe twisting loads and high-speed cornering of road racing. It might crack, flex, or even break apart. The project was quietly shelved, and the acid-dipped Camaro sat unused in a corner of the Penske shop, gathering dust. Word travels fast in racing circles, and Bill Jenkins heard about the rejected car early in 1967. He saw opportunity where others saw risk. Drag racing was different from road racing. Straight-line acceleration put far less twisting stress on the body. What was dangerous on a road course could be an unbeatable advantage on the drag strip. Jenkins bought the shell at a fraction of its original cost and hauled it back to his shop in Malvern. There he transformed it. He updated the appearance with 1968 Camaro trim, door glass, bumpers, and details, so it looked like a newer model. Underneath, the acid-dipped body remained, paper-thin and dramatically lighter. Two grown men could lift the empty shell off the ground with relative ease. Jenkins kept the details close. He was never one to share his secrets freely. When restorers or historians later asked about the car's history, he often changed the subject or simply hung up the phone. By 1968 and 1969, the car, now known as Grumpy's Toy 4, ran successfully in superstock, winning races and building Jenkins' reputation even further. But the real breakthrough came in 1970, when the NHRA introduced Pro Stock as a new professional class. Heads-up racing, no breakouts, factory-looking cars with big modifications allowed under strict rules. Jenkins converted his Camaro to Pro Stock trim. Slicks, a big tunnel ram intake, and that lightweight body giving him a hidden edge in power to weight. At the 1970 Winter Nationals in Pomona, California, the very first NHRA Pro Stock national event, Grumpy's Toy 4 made history. Bill Jenkins drove it to victory, posting a 9.99-second quarter-mile pass at 139 miles per hour. It was the first time any production-based car had broken into the nines in official competition. The crowd was stunned. Rivals with larger engines were left behind. Just weeks later, at the Gator Nationals in Gainesville, he won again, defeating top names like Ronnie Sox and collecting substantial prize money in the process. But success like that draws attention. After only a handful of races and 2 major wins, the NHRA ruled the car ineligible. Officially, they said it was too old for the class. Unofficially, many believed the real issue was the car's extreme lightness. The acid-dipped body was almost impossible to inspect without destroying it, and it gave Jenkins an advantage that bent the spirit of the rules. The Camaro was retired from Pro Stock, sold to another racer named Brooklyn Heavy, and eventually faded into obscurity for many years. Yet that short, brilliant run in 1970 marked the beginning of something bigger. Bill Jenkins had shown what clever engineering and a willingness to push boundaries could achieve. The forbidden Camaro wasn't just a race car. It was the first weapon in his hidden war on weight, and it set the stage for even greater innovations to come. Acid dipping explained the dark science. So how exactly did it work? This quiet, almost industrial process that turned ordinary steel into an unfair advantage? It began with what they called a body in white, the bare, unpainted steel shell straight from the factory, before any trim, glass, or interior went in. Teams like Jenkins would ship it to specialized shops, places like Aerochem in those days, where massive tanks held strong acid solutions, usually muriatic or phosphoric blends designed for chemical milling in aerospace work. The shell was lowered in, fully submerged, and left to soak. The acid didn't just clean, it ate away at the metal itself, dissolving thin layers from both sides of every panel. Over hours or days, depending on how aggressive the bath was, the steel thinned dramatically, from factory thickness of around 0.032 to 0.035 inches down to something far lighter, sometimes paper-thin in places. The result? Weight savings that added up fast, 100 to 250 pounds or more off the entire body, depending on how deeply they went. On one Vega project, restorers later measured losses around 120 pounds from the shell alone. Individual panels could shed 30 pounds each. And when combined with other tricks, stripped interiors, lightweight parts, the total drop could push toward 300 pounds or beyond. It sounded almost too simple, didn't it? No welding, no cutting, just chemistry doing the heavy lifting. The panels still looked like stock steel from the outside. No obvious holes or modifications for inspectors to spot without tearing the car apart. That was the beauty of it and the danger. Because the metal wasn't just lighter, it was weaker. Thinned panels flexed more under load, prone to stress cracks, dents, or outright failure if pushed too hard. On a drag strip, straight line, controlled launches, it held up fine. The forces were mostly linear, pushing straight back. But on a road course, with all the twisting and cornering loads Penske had worried about years earlier, it could have been disastrous. Chevrolet's engineers had seen that risk and walked away. Jenkins knew the difference, and he bet his career on it. Yet here's the question that lingers even now. How far could you push this before the rule makers caught on? And what happened when one man took the idea even further, moving from a rejected Camaro to a tiny Vega that turned the pro stock world upside down? The acid dip wasn't just a trick. It was the opening move in a hidden war on weight that was about to get much bigger and much more controversial. The Vega Revolution? By late 1971, the NHRA made a change that would quietly open the door for revolution. To encourage more variety in pro stock and give smaller engines a fairer shot against the dominant big block Hemis, they introduced weight brakes. A car with a small block wedge engine could compete at a lighter minimum weight, around 6.75 pounds per cubic inch, compared to the heavier Hemis at 7.25. It was intended to level things. Bill Jenkins saw it as an opportunity to rewrite the rules of engagement. He turned to the 1972 Chevrolet Vega, a compact economy car never sold from the factory with a V8. Its small size, light curb weight, and slippery shape made it perfect for exploitation. In his Malvern shop, Jenkins and his team built what became Grumpy's Toy 9, a 331 cubic inch small block Chevrolet, carefully bored and stroked from a 327 block to stay under displacement limits while delivering serious power, dropped into a Vega body that had been acid-dipped for maximum weight reduction. Beneath it all went the class's first partial tube chassis, adding rigidity without piling on pounds. The engine, fed by dual carbs through a modified intake, was tuned for reliability and consistency. Jenkins famously recorded 250 straight passes without missing a shift that year. The car made its national debut at the 1972 Winter Nationals in Pomona, completely untested. Qualifying was rough. A modest 9.90-second pass put them 17th out of 32 cars. The team spent the night dialing in the chassis and suspension. Come race day, the little Vega transformed, dropping into the low 9.6s, winning round after round, and reaching the final against Don Grathier. Jenkins took the victory in the car's very first national event appearance. It was a shock to the big Hemi teams who had ruled the class. The momentum carried through the season. Grumpy's Toy 9 won 5 of the first 8 events overall, including regionals, and 6 of the 8 NHRA national meets. Victories piled up at places like the Gator Nationals, Spring Nationals, Super Nationals, and more. The big Mopar factory efforts, Sox and Martin, Dick Landy, found themselves chasing a car that looked like a grocery getter but ran like a missile. By year's end, Jenkins had claimed the 1972 Pro Stock World Championship, the first for a tube chassis car and the first for this unlikely platform. He earned around $250,000 that season, including event purses, contingencies, and manufacturer support, a figure that matched NBA star Wilt Chamberlain as the highest-paid professional athlete in America at the time. For the first time, a drag racer graced the cover of Time magazine, bringing mainstream attention to the sport. In 1973, with NHRA now allowing records at any national event, Jenkins pushed further. At the Winter Nationals, he set Pro Stock's first official top speed record, 148.76 miles per hour in the Vega. Dyno Don Nicholson took the ET mark that year at 9.33. The car was proving not just competitive, but dominant. Yet, Jenkins was already planning the next leap. For 1974, he unveiled Grumpy's Toy 11, a radically evolved Vega built with help from SRD race cars. This one featured a full chrome moly tube frame chassis, weighing just over 100 pounds, wrapped in acid-dipped Vega panels, with fiberglass replacements for the hood, hatch, and bumpers to shed even more weight, total savings approaching 300 pounds when combined. Up front, a pioneering McPherson strut suspension for better geometry and room under the hood. In the rear, a custom 3-link setup. The 331 small block now ran a dry sump oiling system, one of the first in Pro Stock, along with heavily ported iron heads, a massive Edelbrock tunnel ram, dual 1050 Dominator carbs, and refinements that pushed output to around 680 horsepower at staggering 9,300 revolutions per minute through the lights. A Dana 60 rear end with a tall 6.17:1 gear handled the torque, backed by a slick-shift manual or early Lenco. The results were staggering. Grumpy's Toy 11 delivered 13 Pro Stock wins across the 1974 season, the only Chevrolet to win any NHRA national events that year. It dipped into the 8.7s at over 154 miles per hour, the quickest legal times in the class. The Hemi Goliath era was over, small block science had taken command. But dominance like this rarely goes unchallenged for long. How much further could one man stretch the rules before the NHRA had to draw a hard line? The acid dipping, the tube frames, the endless refinements, they were all part of a hidden war that had now become impossible to ignore. The answers would arrive soon, closing one chapter while opening the door to the modern pro stock we know today. The hidden war. So why do we call it a hidden war on weight? Because the real battle was fought out of sight, in quiet shops and acid tanks far from the grandstands. Acid dipping, or chemical milling as the aerospace folks called it, was never about dramatic modifications you could spot from the pits. The cars still wore factory paint, factory emblems, factory VIN tags. They passed visual inspections, scale weights, and tape measurements without raising alarms. To prove a panel had been thinned required destructive testing, cutting into a fender, door, or quarter panel to reveal the uneven etching, the telltale yellowed acid marks, the metal that had been eaten away layer by layer. Until someone took a saw to the body, the secret held. Jenkins and a select few top teams, Dick Landy with his Dodges, Sox and Martin in their early Mopars, honed the technique quietly, sometimes full-body dips, sometimes selective on high-stress areas, always staying just within the letter of the rules while shaving hundreds of pounds that translated directly into quicker ETS and higher trap speeds. In pro stock, where tenths, or even hundredths, of a second decided races, that hidden advantage was everything. The NHRA couldn't turn a blind eye forever. By the 1973 season, as more cars arrived suspiciously light and whispers filled the pits about acid baths at places like Aerochem, the sanctioning body stepped in. They issued a clear ban on chemical milling of body panels. No more acid dipping, no more thin steel allowed in pro stock. They also tightened minimum weights further, refined body rules to prevent extreme lightning tricks, and pushed toward mandatory chassis inspections that would make such modifications harder to conceal. It wasn't singled out at Jenkins alone. Several leading teams had embraced the process. But his repeated dominance, with the Camaro in 1970 and the Vega sweep in 1972, had made the issue impossible to ignore. The war on weight had forced the rulemakers to close one loophole and open the door to the next era, full tube frame chassis as standard, purpose-built race cars that looked less like street machines and more like the streamlined pro stockers we see today. Bill Jenkins never made excuses or boasted loudly about bending edges. In the interviews he gave later in life, he'd offer the same straightforward line, "I just wanted to go faster." That simple drive, equal parts scientific curiosity, farm boy stubbornness, and relentless perfectionism, made him one of the most influential figures the sport has known. He claimed the NHRA Pro Stock World Championship as a driver in 1972 with his Vega, then again as a team owner in 1976, proving his engineering could elevate any good driver behind the wheel. Engines he built powered 5 NHRA Pro Stock titles overall and 3 in the AHRA, along with countless national records and event wins. His list of firsts reads like a timeline of modern drag tech: the kick-out oil pan to prevent oil starvation on hard launches, Pro Stock strut-style front suspension, the dry sump oiling system that kept oil pressure steady at high RPM, cool cans for fuel, electric water pump fans, gas-ported pistons for better ring seal, slick-shift manual transmissions for quicker, more reliable shifts. Many of these became standard because Grumpy proved they worked, often on his own cars first. Grumpy passed away on March 29, 2012, at age 81, from heart failure in Powley, Pennsylvania, but his influence endures. Chevrolet and General Motors credited him with doing more than anyone to develop and perfect the small block V8 for competition. The NHRA ranked him number 8 on their 2001 list of the top 50 drivers of all time. Restored examples of Grumpy's Toy 4, the acid-dipped Camaro, and the groundbreaking Vegas now sit proudly in museums and private collections, their once secret thinned panels displayed safely, no longer hidden, but celebrated as artifacts of ingenuity. In the end, Bill Jenkins didn't just race cars or build engines. He challenged the very limits of what was possible in a sport born on the streets and raised to professionalism. He showed that a clever mind, armed with science and determination, could outrun factory money and bigger power. That's the true legacy of his hidden war on weight, a quiet revolution that echoes every time a pro stock car launches down the quarter-mile today. And so the story of Bill "Grumpy" Jenkins and his hidden war on vehicle weight comes full circle. What began as a clever, almost quiet rebellion against heavier cars and bigger engines ended up reshaping an entire class of racing. The acid-dipped panels, the tube frames, the small block dominance, they were all part of one man's relentless pursuit of going just a little faster, a little smarter. Jenkins never sought the spotlight the way some did. He let his cars do the talking and they spoke volumes. In an era of factory teams and deep pockets, he proved that ingenuity, hard work, and a bit of engineering courage could level the playing field, or even tilt it in your favor. Today, when you watch pro stock races with their sleek, purpose-built machines flying down the quarter-mile, remember that much of what you see traces back to Grumpy's shop in Malvern, Pennsylvania. The innovations he pioneered became the foundation for generations of racers who followed. Thank you for joining us on this journey through one of drag racing's most fascinating chapters. If these stories of the old days, of clever minds, fast cars, and the men who built them, mean something to you, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Perhaps you remember seeing Grumpy race in person, or maybe you have a favorite memory from those pro stock battles. Share it in the comments below. If you'd like more tales from drag racing's golden era, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. Next time, we'll look at another legendary rivalry, Grumpy versus Sox and Martin, the battles that defined an era. Until then, take care and keep the memories alive. Drag racing's past is full of heroes like Bill Jenkins, and we're grateful for every one of them.